Hey guys, welcome back. So today I'm going to be teaching you how to make a chocolate cherry and pistachio trifle. Cherries are in season at the moment and they're so delicious. Seems like a difficult recipe, but there's a few simple steps that we're going to put together, and the first one is a chocolate sponge and pistachio custard. Then poach some cherries in Pedro Jimenez sherry, which is kind of like a sweet style of sherry. And then we're going to make a jelly out of that liquid that we poached the cherries in, and then bring it all together. Okay, so let's get cracking. So let's start by putting the pistachio nuts into a small saucepan. Cover them with water and then put on the stove and simmer for about 10 minutes to soften. Next, crack 4 whole free-range eggs into a mixing bowl. Tip in the sugar, and then using the whisk attachment of the mixer, whip on high speed until they're super light and fluffy and even double in size. Once they're done, remove from the mixer, tap the whisk to get all the goodness out, and then sift in the flour and cocoa. Once it's all sifted, use a rubber spatula to fold the dry ingredients in gently, making sure not to knock out too much air. Then pour in the cooled melted butter and mix through gently. Next, pour the cake mix into a greased and lined baking tray. Transfer to an oven preheated to 190 degrees for about 20 minutes. Once the pistachios are done, pour them into a sieve and then run under a cold tap and allow to drain. Once they've drained, tip the pistachios into a dry tea towel and rub together to remove the skins. Once the pistachios are all peeled, tip them into the mortar, add a bit of sugar and then use the pestle to make them into a paste. Once your pistachio paste is fine enough, use a spoon to remove and then set aside. Your sponge should be ready by now, so whip it out and give it a little press in the middle to make sure that it's cooked. To make the cherry poaching syrup, put the water, Pedro Jimenez sherry, sugar and spices into a small saucepan and put on the heat and bring to a simmer. To prepare the cherries, just cut around the stone and then twist to separate. Then use your thumb to remove the stone. This can be a bit of a messy job, so it's not a bad idea to wear an apron. Once all the cherries are ready, pour them into the warm poaching liquid, being careful not to splash it anywhere. Then put a cartouche on top, and then a plate slightly smaller than the diameter of the saucepan. Turn it down to a low heat now. To make the pistachio custard, start off by putting the milk and cream into a saucepan. Then grab half a vanilla bean and scrape the seeds out. Put the seeds and the scraped vanilla bean into the cream and milk, and then put on the stove and bring to a boil. While the milk and cream is coming to the boil, separate 7 eggs and put the yolks into a stainless steel bowl. Add the sugar and then, using a whisk, whip vigorously until it becomes light and fluffy. Once the milk and cream has come to the boil, pour it over the egg yolks and sugar and mix well with a rubber spatula. Transfer it back into a clean saucepan and then put back on a medium heat. Stir constantly with a rubber spatula to stop it curdling on the bottom while it's cooking. Before you start cooking the anglaise, it's a good idea to set up an ice bath. Once the custard is at the right thickness, pour it through the sieve into the chilled bowl. Next, add the pistachio paste and mix well. Once the pistachio paste is mixed in, keep stirring the custard from time to time just to make sure it cools down quickly. If there are a few lumps in your creme anglaise, don't worry, you can use a stick blender to blitz it up so it's nice and smooth. Once the cherries are cooked, remove the plate, then the cartouche, and use a slotted spoon to transfer the cherries to a plate to cool. To make the jelly, we need to soak the gelatin first, so add the gelatin sheets one by one to a bowl of cold water and make sure they're submerged. Once the gelatin is soft, take it out of the water and give it a squeeze to remove any excess. Then put into the warm poaching liquid and whisk gently. Pour through a sieve into a prepared mould, and then transfer to the fridge to set. Once the jelly is set, remove it from the mould onto a chopping board, then dice into large cubes. Yeah, that's going to taste so good. Now it's time to cut up the sponge. trim off all of the edges and then cut it into cubes about the same size as the jelly. Okay guys, so we've got everything ready. It wasn't that hard, in fact it was pretty easy. So now it's time to put everything together, okay? So, let's do it. We're gonna start off with a few pieces of sponge, maybe about 4 should do. And then I've put some of the Pedro Jimenez cherry into this little guy, just to make it easier to pour into here. So just cover it nicely with that. And it doesn't matter if you don't get it directly on it, because what is in the bottom is going to soak up all into that sponge. And then we're going to add for some of this custard. Yum, look at that, how creamy and delicious. Awesome. And then what we're going to do is add some of the jelly. Look at these big cubes of jelly in here. How cool is that? Tastes so good. And then time for some of these cherries. So maybe about half a dozen of these. Try to get some to the outside so you can see them through the glass. What we're going to do is repeat. So sponge again, maybe we'll go 5 pieces this time. Get those in there. And then more of the sherry. And don't forget, if you're making this for kids, you can just leave the sherry out. It's fine to cook the cherries in it, but maybe not in the sponge. And then anglaise. Oh yeah, filling all those gaps. And then go with the jelly again. And then with the cherries, about another half a dozen again. And then we've got some roasted pistachios here. So these were blanched and peeled too, and then just roasted to give a bit of crunch. So we'll sprinkle those on. Try to get most of them in the glass. And then, finally, chocolate. Grated chocolate on top. Try to get most of it in the glass too, but it doesn't matter if some of it goes on the outside. And here it is, my chocolate, cherry and pistachio trifle. How good is that? Look at those big tubes of jelly. We've got the glistening cherries, the sponge soaked with Pedro Jimenez, crunchy pistachios on top, that creamy pistachio anglaise, and of course the grated chocolate on top. I can't wait to try it. It's going to be so delicious. And please, I hope that you try it at home too, because it's really not that hard. And don't forget to subscribe, like, all of those good things. If you have any questions, please ask in the comment section and I will reply to you. So, Merry Christmas and enjoy.